So the rough draft, it's a big hassle for any writer. For a lot of us, I mean, we consider it to be the biggest hurdle in terms of wanting to be a writer. If you've never written a book before, or if you have, you still consider, a lot of us still consider it to be quite a big hurdle to overcome, especially depending on how long you plan on your story is. But I'm here to tell you that writing a rough draft does not need to be difficult. You can do it. You can do it very relatively quickly, especially if you do it how I do, which is what I'm going to be talking about in today's video. So when I write a rough draft, I don't write with the intention of being a perfectionist and having every single detail mapped out. I feel like a lot of writers do this, and I feel like that's where they fall into a pit hole of not being able to write and getting into a slump, is when they go, oh, but this doesn't seem realistic, this doesn't seem accurate, this doesn't seem blah blah blah. But that, to me, in a rough draft, that's not really something you should worry too much about. In a rough draft, literally all I think you should worry about is, does the story make sense to you? You, the writer. Does the story make sense to me, is what I think when I write this. When I write a rough draft. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to anyone else. No one else is going to read this. Like, I would never let anyone read my rough drafts. They're shit. Because, like, they're just filled with spelling mistakes and other issues. And it's okay if your rough draft is also filled with spelling mistakes and other grammatical issues and doesn't make too much sense to, like, the average person, so long as it makes sense to you. Because as a lot of, like, very famous authors have said, rough draft is literally just you telling the story to yourself. It's you telling the story and seeing if you like it and if you want to continue with it. And if you don't, then hey, that's fine, move on to something else. But if you do find you want to continue with it, then then making sure it makes sense to other people is what the second, third, fourth, fifth, however many drafts you plan on writing it for. That's what rewriting is. To me, anyway. Rewriting to me is just going over the rough draft, writing everything down as is, and then seeing if there are any issues, any mistakes that you need to correct, any problems that you may see, anything that you see that might potentially be, that you may potentially see as like, oh no, this might offend somebody. But it didn't offend me, so I wrote it down, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I feel like a lot of authors decide that they should edit as they write. And to me, I've never done this, and I don't understand why people do. Like, the whole aspect of editing while you write, like, oh, I'm just going to write chapter 1, then I'm going to edit it 50 times until it's perfect. Like, yeah, but now you don't know what you're going to do for chapter 2, do you? And then you're just going to have to repeat the process again and again. And then these people probably would also do rewrites as well, so you're just building up so much more writing for you to do that you don't need. Well, in my opinion, that you don't need to do. Because if you just write the rough draft as quickly as possible and as like much as it makes sense to you, and then you decide when you read through it that, yeah, I like this, I want to continue with this, I want to write a second draft that would make sense to other people. That's what I feel the rough draft is for. It's just for you. And if someone comes across your rough draft and goes like, oh, that didn't make any sense to me, like, it's not supposed to make sense to them. Well, maybe it is, but it doesn't have to, is my point. So I feel like a lot of authors agonize over the rough drafts and spend an inordinate amount of time on it, just going, this needs to be perfect, this detail needs to be perfect, this needs to be perfect. When in reality, that's what the rewriting is. That's what editing is. That's what rewriting is. And even then, when you edit a rough draft, you don't need to edit in any great detail. When I edit my rough drafts, I literally go through the book like maybe 6 times in terms of edits. And then I move on to the second draft. Because I like to get the rough draft out of my system as fast as possible, and then give myself a week to breathe, then work on the second draft. And yeah, that's just my opinion on it, and I feel like if a lot of more authors followed this advice, they wouldn't be agonizing so much over how long, or spending so much time writing. And as much as I enjoy writing, when I'm finished with a project, I don't want to touch it again. And like sometimes if you write a project for a very long time, you just want it to be over with. I've been writing Sapphire Sunlight now, which is, bear in mind, only like 35,000 words long. I started writing that in February. It's almost December. I've basically only got 2 weeks left until I'm finished with it. And I am drained and I am tired of it. But if you set yourself up to like write, well, a book longer than that, but you spend like 3 years on it, then you're just going to drain yourself, and you're going to make yourself hate your writing, if you want my own personal opinion. And like when I write a rough draft, usually it takes me, well, provided I do it every day like I have been, it takes like 2 months, 3 months to write, and then an extra month on top of that to do the edits. Bear in mind I only write novellas, not full novels, but still. And yeah, I asked the writing community on Twitter to give me their opinion on this in the form of a poll. Well, it's not really their opinion, it's more just trying to get a light on it. And I asked them, how much time do you dedicate to writing and editing your rough draft relative to the overall time spent on writing your book/story? And only 11% said, well, I have 9 votes, only 11% said they spend under 20% of that time. Only 11% said they spend 20 to 50% of that time. I think I fall into this category. I probably spend about maybe 30% of my time on the first draft. Then I move on to the second draft as fast as possible. 33% said they spend 51 to 70% of their overall time on the rough draft. And 44% said they spend 71 to 100% on the rough draft. So, out of the people polled, which admittedly is not that many, a lot of them go, well, the rough draft needs to be perfect. I need to write as many of these as I possibly can. It's like, no, I need to write this for as long as I can and make it as good as I possibly can so I have less work in the long run. But in my opinion, you don't have less work in the long run. You have the same amount of work in the long run. You've just made it so that you yourself have to do a lot more work. Well, anyway, that's this episode. But before I go, I do have a quick announcement. So, like I mentioned earlier, Sapphire Sunlight is coming out in a few weeks. So this is the last episode of Indie Opinions this year, in the year 2020. So it's the end of November now, but for the month of December, I'm going to be taking a month off from doing Indie Opinions videos, and also from writing World Stains, so the next short story that comes out in a week or two, depending on how long it takes me to write them, is going to be the last one of those until January as well. Because in December I want to work on the promotion of Sapphire Sunlight and other writing projects that I want to do, and just in general take a break from doing videos. So yeah, that's just my opinion on all this, and I'll see you next time. Right on.